What she really thinks. And Tim, thank you for your leadership. This is so encouraging. This is so heartening. I understand there are 16 buses from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, over 1,000 people. The love of freedom is alive and well in Pennsylvania, and I'm so glad you're here today. You know, folks, we know very well about all the broken promises of Obamacare. We heard all the promises about how this was going to lower costs. This was going to improve access. We didn't believe it then, and we sure don't believe it now. But I'm here to suggest that there's something even more important at stake than even the outrageous cost increases and mandates and all of the regulations that we're putting up with. What is at stake and what is on trial today? Absolutely right. It is actually the American experiment itself. It is the American experiment, ladies and gentlemen, because at the heart of that experiment, for over 200 years now, has been the constitutionally enshrined idea that we live as free men and women, and that we have a federal government whose powers are enumerated and they are thus limited. This is the central idea of our Constitution, that the federal government has no general police powers to compel us to do what some politician wants. It's clearly not there in the Constitution. And if this law is allowed to stand, then we would be turning the very Constitution on its head, and we would be forfeiting, for the first time in the history of the Republic, the idea that the powers of government are limited and the freedom of individuals is unlimited. We cannot allow that to happen, ladies and gentlemen. That's what's at stake. And remember, if the federal government has the power to force you to go out and buy the health insurance plan that they dictate, if we accept the idea that that's a permissible power of the federal government, trust me, it doesn't end there. If they can force you to go out and buy a health insurance plan that they define, they can force you to buy the food they want you to buy. They can force you to buy the shelter they want you to have. They can force you to buy transportation and clothing and education. There is no limit to the power of a government if it is not a government under enumerated and thus limited powers. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what is at stake. We have a sacred responsibility, because we are the generation that at this moment faces this challenge. For ourselves, for our kids, for posterity, the challenge is to preserve the liberty that allowed us to build the greatest society in the history of the world. And so we face a great test. The Supreme Court faces this test today, this challenge to defend the Constitution, to defend our freedoms. The President of the United States let us down by pursuing and enacting this. The Congress at the time let us down by supporting and enacting this. And now the last piece of the federal government will have its say. And we need to urge the members of the men and women on the Supreme Court to stand up for our freedom, for the Constitution. But make no mistake about it, whatever decision they make, we will continue this fight for the freedom of the American people.